for a while and reached out and we met. And the thing about Kevin is he's got this sort of goodness to him, you know, and he's got this sweetness, and the character himself, you know, he doesn't say a ton, and so that energy has to come through. And I felt after meeting Zach the first time, I was like, oh yeah, he's got it. And yeah, so it was quite easy.
Zach, I want to bring it to you signing on to this one, because again, I've seen you do physical things. I've seen you play a character somewhat similar to this, as far as the person that I think a lot of people rally around and sort of like the heart of a particular thing. But I'm sure this was very daunting, maybe signing on to it, just knowing that it was going to be a family, a person that you would eventually get to meet, which I know you did in Dallas. Like, what was the most intriguing and maybe the most challenging part of this portrayal for you?
Well, Sean kind of said it. I've loved Sean as a filmmaker for a very long time, and I had often thought of if I could fit into one of your worlds. So it was pretty cool to. The first time we met, I remember we were in New York and we were at a hotel bar. I think I wasn't filming this day. But you were interested in making something, and you said, all right, this first part's going to be a bit jarring. And I was like, oh gosh, this is going to be some magic Mike or something. So what is he going to do? Oh gosh. He said, it's a pro wrestler. And that was the next closest thing. I went, oh. Okay, what's the song? He goes, don't worry, it's a true story. It's a true story. And he continued then over the course of, I don't know, probably 1 or 2 hours telling me the story of the Von Erichs and his plan to make this film. And I was captivated. I remember I signed on right then and there, and I knew it would be daunting, but I think that kind of challenge is the thing that makes this industry exciting. It's what's exciting to be an actor. And Sean was clearly the kind of guy who was capable to guide me through finding Kevin Von Erich.
Yeah, I will say one of the most interesting things about this is when you know about the story even a little bit, the first thing you hear is tragedy. You don't hear about the love, you don't hear about anything else. It's sort of the tagline. I think it's why Kevin maybe wanted to stress the love of the family so that didn't become the only thing. And your character, I will go ahead and say this, his sort of tenacity and steadfastness is something that's very hard to portray in the face of everything else that's going around here. I'm curious, how did you sort of portray this version of Kevin believably in his earnest despite everything that was going around, so that when he eventually does turn, we feel that, like, we feel how this is such a big shift for him later on in the film?
I had a lot of help from Sean. I think that was kind of in the page, and it's also in the way that he works on performance with you. I think there's details in there that lend themselves to being stoic and really feeling something in the moment. And he guided me through this whole movie that way. But Kevin Von Erich said something similar to me. He said he appreciated that kind of inability to express his emotion or what he's going through, like to his father, really to anybody, for a very long period of time, about what was going on in the ring, about how demanding it was, about how it was taking its toll. And he appreciated that about the performance, and that made me really, really happy. We sat for like an hour and a half, and he talked to me about it. It was incredible. So yeah, I don't know how. I think it was a lot of Sean.
Yeah, I want to talk about y'all's fateful meeting in Dallas, because I'm sure that was absolutely incredible. Stanley, I'm actually going to bring it to you because folks got to hear your incredible song on the closing credits, and they got to see you do that aspect of your character in the film. But I love to hear about that day, because again, these guys are doing very physical things, but like, I think I'd be very intimidated to start singing in that sort of room, and the way you guys had to do that. Talk about that day that you guys had to do that music scene, because I know that was, one, recorded live, two, you had the entire cast there, and I heard that you may have done a little brief serenade at one point during the process of it, which I think is all great.
Yeah. Well, I first want to say that Richard Perry,
he wrote that song. I didn't write that song.
Not right, sorry, before.
But he did an amazing job in that. And then I want to shout out the band that I did it with as well. They're called Lovers. And they're a really great group of kids. And we were debating with Sean whether or not we were going to do it live. And then and I was very scared about that scene. It was probably the most challenging scene I had. And I think once we were there and we did it live, it turned out great. It felt right as soon as we started playing. And I think it's a party. It's not supposed to be 100% perfect, but it was a fun time, and I think we all had fun that day. And yes, there was some downtime, and I was singing some High School Musical songs.
Sorry, I would be in trouble if I didn't mention that you sang High School Musical to Zac Efron like that day.
Where was I for this? I want to see.
Real talk. What was that like for you? The brief serenade. What was it like? Like taking, looking in a mirror?
Yeah.
He said, "You're not hitting it," and I was like, "Oh."
Oh, you got notes. You got notes.
God damn it, Stanley. I do remember that being one of the most fun days of filming that we had. We showed up to, filming a house party kind of can go one way or the other. It's either a lot of people that are stuck in one room for many days. It can be kind of daunting. But this one was just electric. It felt like a high school party in a Arroyo Grande or something. It was really, really special.
I mean, we only had half a day to shoot it, so we didn't have much luxury.
And it was pretty cool. I think one of the first times I got to see you perform that song was as we did the oneer that pulls us into the party.
Yeah.
That was one of the first times I'd really ever heard it.
And it kind of became the theme of the movie a tiny bit, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Heck yeah.
And yeah, I mean, I felt really strongly about recording it live. I really wanted to, so we had, the space itself is tiny. It's like a nightmare to record sound in there, and we had to go to great lengths to even get it recorded.
Make me sound good.
It sounds good in the movie. You should have heard it live. It was so fun.
Yeah,
it was couldn't stop moving. It was just fun.
Yeah.
Oh, I do love that. We got a little house party. Jeremy, sir, I definitely want to go into everything that your character goes into this. Everyone, Harris, who's not here, unfortunately, Lily, and all of you give incredible performances, but your character is also someone that goes to a lot of different places in this one, which I thought were just absolutely jaw-dropping and incredible. But I will say this is such a shift again for, I think, even you. What was the intrigue for you signing on to this? Because I do think you're somebody that's very particular about the type of roles that you want to take, and I think, was it the character? Was it Sean? What was it? Maybe you wanted to get in all that spandex. I don't know.
Yeah, the draw, there were a lot. Sean was really number one. I've known Sean since I was like 15. He produced the first movie I really ever did, this movie After School, and I think I was always trying to find my way back to him. So yeah, just Sean from the start made it really interesting to me, and then we started speaking about it. I watched the episode of Dark Side of the Ring on the Von Erichs. I think even before I read the script, I had watched it, and I was immediately fascinated. I mean, the story just seemed, it was unbelievable. Like I just I couldn't believe the tragedy that it struck this single family, and then the role of Carrie, I just found his trajectory really fascinating. Those once feeling very on top of the world, and then really having your whole world shatter around you. I think there was a piece of footage that Sean showed me while we were filming that I really sort of attached myself to. It became this kind of key to Carrie, which is it's a real video after the motorcycle accident where he's in his hospital bed, he's with his father, and he's speaking to the press and to his fans about how he's doing great and everything's okay, and we know obviously that's all a lie, and he's smiling, but you can really see the pain and the fear in his eyes, and yeah, I don't know. I think I found it really interesting playing a character that was really like losing something, where all of his self-worth was kind of involved in this career and in that world, and then he was losing it, you know.
Yeah, in a very, at times, violent ways towards the end. Obviously, it gets very dramatic with everything that's happening with Carrie. I think one of my favorite moments of the film, and I think every character has a hero moment, but that Ring episode when he's got the rest in peace memory on the back. And actually in Dallas, I sat in front of some people that were either very knowledgeable of Texas wrestling, or maybe they were former Texas wrestlers, but they were giving me color commentary the whole time. And they wanted me to make sure that I knew that you were not fighting the right guy in that scene, but they did say, they really did.
What?
They were like, that was not the guy he fought that day. Then Sean's like,
Definitely the right guy.
yeah, he's like, that's not the right guy. That's what they said. They're like, that's not the right guy. They told me that. I don't know. This is what they said, not me. But they also said they loved how much detail went into the recreation from the way you walked into the ring. Every bit of that, they said, felt like exactly the same way that it did when they watched it the first time on TV. So I'd love for you to talk about recreating that with such specificity, because again, it's one of the few moments in this very emotional film where I was like just rooting for him, and like I didn't remember what happened. I was just like, win, please.
Yeah, I mean, look, the amazing thing about this project, I mean, we got to really study this world. It's kind of the greatest thing about being an actor is you get to kind of spend months learning from professionals from these different worlds. And yeah, we had a great deal of footage on these athletes, on these performers, and so yeah, we would get together and we would watch these men do what they did, and we also had really amazing, like our wardrobe department was so specific, hair and makeup, like we just had a really excellent team put together by Sean to make sure that everything was sort of as accurate and detailed as possible, you know.
Yeah, I'm obsessed with the detail and getting it right, and to the point where like people have to tell me to calm down about wrestling detail because I'll just like go off. And so it was a big challenge for me, right, to tell the story of this family where I could tell you the wrestling timeline of each of the boys for a decade, you know, and to try and like separate myself from that and be like, okay, well that's not important to the story, and just get to that place of like, okay, these matches are important to the story, you know, this match is a mixture of these two matches, and so there's like some historical truth in them, but then making them fit the narrative as well. So it was a big challenge.
One thing you can't grasp, and this was the first time I met Sean, but within 5 minutes, I was like, oh man, this guy went deep. He knows more about wrestling than I've probably ever forgotten. But I'm sure on set for you guys, that was both incredible, but also, again, also daunting. So if any of you wanted to share, I'm sure, Zach, you've got a great wrestling superfan moment with Sean where he just like pulled something where you're like, what? How did you know this happened there? That really helped sort of prescribe what you were doing with the character, because again, if you've got that encyclopedic knowledge sitting right next to you, I'm sure it's so comforting as an actor being able to lean on that.
Yeah, I feel like those moments happen all the time over the course of the movie. It was very clear that Sean knew all the details of even, I guess, what I would think were obscure wrestlers. They're not. They were big back in the day, in their day, and with the detail with which he remembered things from the matches from like his television set at home was amazing. So him being able to recall these very specific moments meant a lot. And where it really came into play, I think a lot was with the physicality in the ring. We had an amazing coach named Chavo Guerrero, and he's an icon. He's so electric in the ring. But with all the wrestling and the moves and in preparation for those, we didn't have all that much time. So it was as fast as we could kind of learn these moves, Chavo would help us kind of perfect them, and then we'd really film them instantaneously. And that goes for all the guys. So we would get enough takes, and we would have one where Sean would feel stoked, and I would know he was like, "We got that," And that's really where so much of it came into play for me, because I'm specific about moves as well and movement on camera.
And we would shoot the full matches too. So like these guys couldn't just learn like one-off moves. They'd have to learn the whole thing and do it a bunch of times. And so it was pretty impressive. Like they're real naturals.
And then how long was the shoot? Because you guys had, I think, what, like less than a month, right?
It was short. It was, I don't know, six, maybe 7 weeks. It was a really tough shoot. Yeah.
And knowing how much you sort of shot to give yourself options, shout out to your editor, because in sports movies, who was here actually.
Was here. Give a round of applause.
Yeah. That is a very difficult task with sports movies in general. If you're trying to recreate sports moments scene for scene, it becomes even more difficult. The thing I thought that your previous filmography helped you with is there's a very cultish aspect to wrestling. And for folks that don't know your first film with Lizzie Olsen, which that definitely dials into that, as well as dysfunctional families, how much of that did you want to make sure translated to this? Because I do think, like, for folks that grew up watching wrestling, we don't see it, but with other folks, I would imagine watching this film, you don't understand just how insanely popular it was at that time. Like, it really doesn't scratch the surface of how deeply passionate people were at that time with this type of stuff, and then how detrimental it became to the people involved in it because of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think wrestling is such a beautiful thing because, I mean, first and foremost, it's like an unsung art form. I mean, it is incredible, like, especially getting in there and learning what these guys do and seeing it firsthand. It's the physical element of what they put themselves through. But then it's such a beautiful thing. It's what I connected to as a kid, was this ability, like, it gets people engaged in these simple stories of sort of good and bad, and it allows people to go on a Friday night and scream and cheer and boo and feel all the feelings, you know, especially back then. And it's one of the things that drew me to this place in time for this film, where maybe they weren't expressing themselves at home or, you know, at work, or, you know, they didn't have, it wasn't the expression that we have now and the vocabulary we have now around these things aren't there. And so wrestling still is, but I think then in particular was a place to express. And that, yeah, that really drew me and connected me to it.
The other thing I wanted to talk about is we do have some absent folks here. I already mentioned Lily and Harris, but the patriarch of the Von Erichs and everything that his performance has done in this film, again, remarkable. I've obviously seen him in so much, but seeing him in this was just absolutely kind of jaw-dropping. Since both the dysfunctional loving, like the minute he said I had a favorite kid, I was like, man, and he believes that. Talk about writing that character though, because I do feel of all the characters you had to write, and you wrote them with so many different layers, that one in particular was so delicate in that as horrible as things go, you don't feel him the villain by the end of the character of the story. It's very hard to say, you know, he is, but you know.
No, but that's credit to Holt as well. He brought so much love, and it's such a transformative performance on his part. And you know, I mean, I think he's so good that you just assume he's like that if you don't know him. You know, but it's like it's a tricky role to write, because, you know, Fritz in real life was the way he was, and it is hard to depict with nuance. And so it was a lot of work, and then a lot of work from Holt. And it's funny, you know, getting back to the cult question, which I forgot to answer. You know, in a way, it is sort of like a cult leader, and it's sort of like in any film I do, I never judge anybody, never judge a character, and treat them as a whole person. And so that's, you know, that's always my approach. And, you know, I think every family has a set of rules and a set, you know, a set of behavior, and you don't always know how particular it is until you get out into the world and look back on your own family and say, oh, not everybody does that, okay. So for me, you know, cult is a negative word, but the sort of aspects of cult exist everywhere all the time, you know, so I think it's something I continue to come back to in my work, even if not making something about a cult.
I will say this before we get out of here. It was serendipitous, but also very strange to hear you all learn that the strike was over as you were walking onto the red carpet in Dallas. That was actually pretty hilarious. We got great footage of that. We were like, it's over, it's over. But what was even more interesting for folks that weren't there is y'all went inside and like there was like line dancing. There was this whole Texas-style event. But the entire Von Erich crew was there, and I know, Zach, you did get to talk to him, and I don't want to obviously invade in that moment, but just hearing, look, I work at Rotten Tomatoes, so I will say that's a review that you probably wanted to hear, so I would be curious if you could pass along the review.
Yeah, I'm, Kevin's whole family was out in Dallas for this, and I guess this was the night before the premiere. We sort of had just a, I don't know what they call it, a meet and greet dinner sort of scenario, but there were quite a few people there, and when I walked in, I spotted Kevin kind of across the room, and so I knew he was there. I was very nervous about what he thought of the movie, and after a couple minutes of saying hi to some of his family and stuff, I looked up and I saw him go like, and he pointed towards the patio. I was like, oh, okay, cool. So I was like, hey guys, I'll be right back. And I just went out to the patio, and we had we both sat down, like right across from each other, and we sat forehead to forehead, just talking about life for like an hour and a half. And he told me that he did in fact enjoy the movie and things that he did and did appreciate about it. And yeah, that is, I can't really put into words how that feels. That's far and away the most important review to me on so many levels, and oh man, it meant the world. Everything just came full circle at that moment, and so it's really fun. Yeah, shout out to Kevin Von Erich. And, yeah.
Sean, I'm going to give you the last word before we get out of here. I'm just curious about you. Obviously, you wanted the world to know more about the Von Erichs. You wanted them to know more about this family, but I'm curious. Beyond that, the way Kevin said he wanted them to know how much the family loved each other, what is the thing that you hope audiences really take from it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's, what is it, 40-year-old story, I guess. But I think, the issues of masculinity and how we tell our boys to be and what's acceptable and what isn't, what makes a man, those sorts of notions, I think, as much as they are getting better, it is still a major issue. And, that is something that's very close to me and important to me about making this film, along with, just the story of survival of Kevin and him finding, re-finding himself surviving because of love and family and being able to express himself, which is, the difference between him surviving and not, ultimately.
All right, well, thank you all very much. I want to thank all of you for watching A24 and remind everyone that Iron Claw is available for voting in all categories. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.